Hey everybody, Alex here and welcome to Momentum Charting. Today we are going to be discussing Apple. Bullish, bearish, what's going on with Apple. But first, before we do that, do me a quick favor. Go down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification. Doing both of those two things is the only way to ensure you do not miss any of my updates over the next couple weeks on Apple and broad stock markets. Some really fun, really exciting, really cool stuff happening in markets right now, guys. With that out of the way, thank you for subscribing. Let's get into the chart. Now, as with this video, guys, and pretty much every video I do, it's basically 100% off the cuff and non-scripted whatsoever. And I do kind of have more that I want to cover in this video than the normal video, so if I start rambling a little bit and make a point more than once, just sort of bear with me on it. I apologize, but I do kind of have a lot of different things that I want to cover in this video relating not only to Apple, but kind of about some trading mentality and psychology, things like that. So, guys, once again, here we are on the weekend, and I am seeing in my YouTube feed and other major media outlets the fear and uncertainty again entering the markets. So no less than 20, 30 videos about how the market is going to crash. The market's crashing right around the corner next week. A major sell-off of 17 to 20% is starting. Guys, I say this a lot, but if you're going to start saying things like markets crashing, you need to bring better evidence forward than like, oh, okay, so slow stochastics indicators pointed down, or there's an RSI divergence that's building, or a MACD divergence. Guys, markets do not work like that, okay? Yes, some of those indicators in certain instances can certainly be helpful, but trying to use them alone and just predicting out of the blue that just because certain things there's a negative divergence and XYZ indicators pointing down, that does not mean that markets are ready to crash. All that means is there's some negative divergence in those indicators which can whipsaw back to the upside and erase those divergences in a matter of a day or less. So basically, guys, what I'm trying to say, and again, I apologize if I'm rambling a little bit here, but all that matters in trading is trend lines and momentum around those trend lines. That's all that matters. You can point to me all the slow stochastics pointing down, all the MACD divergences, all the RSI divergences and operating in so-and-so zone. All that stuff is completely meaningless. Yes, it can help in some instances, but it only helps around important trend lines, important supports and resistances. That is the only thing that matters. To me, the only thing that you need to do in setting up your charting is setting up lines of support and resistance, diagonal and horizontal trend lines, and having some sort of a momentum indicator or a way that you determine momentum off of those trend lines. That is the only thing that matters. Everything else in the markets, as far as indicators and what you think is going to happen, macro outlook, all that stuff is complete bullshit, okay? I'm just going to say it right now. The problem is that most people, most traders really have no concept and admittedly it is difficult, but they don't know how to properly go in and set trend lines and what to look for in those trend lines, what types of things are breaking down and what you need to pay attention to. And it's admittedly it's very difficult because oftentimes you're looking at these big sweeping trend lines, but there's so much noise in between there. People really they start to see markets tank 1% or 2% and they think the markets are crashing, and then they realize the big picture. Oh, well, let me go back and look at that trend line I set 2 years ago and it's not broken yet, but we're getting close, and the whole thing is a mess, guys. you have to know how and where to set your trend lines. And there are longer term trend lines, I call them kind of macro trend lines, and micro trend lines. And there's like a dance happening between those things all the time. So that's, to me, is the absolutely most important aspect of trading, is understanding where you need to set your trend lines at and how and when momentum is building around those trend lines. If you're not doing that, you're just completely guessing. If you're looking at a chart with a MACD and a stochastic that's pointing down below zero and saying the markets are crashing, guys, you are going to get absolutely wrecked in your trading on a consistent basis. And that's why I see most guys, I mean, I hate to say it, I love watching all the videos, but there is so much dangerous misinformation out there. Now, that's not to say markets can't crash, but I'm going to show you the exact points that we need to watch for, like for a massive downside correction on Apple. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you some of the important trend lines we need to watch. So I'm going to get into the stop kind of rambling about the importance of trend lines and momentum around those trend lines. I think you guys understand the point. At some point in the future, I may try to do a tutorial on that, how I do it, but I'm going to kind of go a little bit into it in this video. I think that type of stuff, to be honest, really bores people. You know, I may be wrong about that, but I really think that the technical aspects of trend lines and momentum and stuff really bore people. I personally find it pretty exciting, but I know it bores the hell out of a lot of people. Most people are just more interested in getting a general feel on what people think are happening in the broad markets or equities, or, you know, the pure entertainment stuff like the Elliott waves and all that stuff. Oh, okay, in 2 years S&P is going to be at 7,000. Okay, well, maybe it is, but there's a long ways to go before that happens. So anyways, guys, big picture right now, Apple. So anytime that you're operating in these zones up here on a weekly time frame and momentum, automatically you need to give the benefit of the doubt to the bulls, okay? And not only are we operating in an extremely strong momentum zone on a weekly, but the weekly is, even on a short-term trend, is still pointed to the upside. So again, where's the market crash? You can see that this 50 and 200 still have a very positive alignment. In fact, the 50 is starting to push up even harder on Apple. Is there potentially some resistance coming up in these zones? Yes. Is Apple crashing next week? Maybe. But again, we need to really dive in and look at this. I think it's pretty irresponsible to tell people there's a 20% correction coming next week without any real evidence beside your indicators pointing to the downside. So that's kind of the weekly look. I'm not seeing where in here there's a crash happening. Weekly momentum still strong. Daily momentum, yes, pointed slightly down, but that does not mean we cannot come here, have some sort of channel here, clone this, and just start pushing back to the upside, right? So we need to be really careful in here, calling for 15 to 20% corrections when we have no clear evidence yet as of that. There's a double top here on Apple. I've mentioned that in my last video. So just broad picture, macro, kind of weekly, daily. There's not really a whole lot of evidence here to support the theory that there's a massive market correction coming next week. So guys, let me show you this here in Apple. Now again, extreme importance of support and resistance. I've showed this to you guys before about how I set these trend lines, and I'll show you again. One of my favorite tools to use this, and we'll do a quick tutorial just comparing kind of this last run up, this last really bullish run up from March 29th to April 21st, and juxtapose that here to the June 8th to current run up. And I showed you guys this before, but one of the tools that I do like to use a lot to set trend lines is this kind of modified volume indicator. And what basically it does more than really volume. It kind of shows how to set your trend lines, because it's showing basically the different cycles that are happening and developing in the market, and I find it to be an extremely useful tool. So what happens here, basically, I'm on a 1 hour time frame, and as I've mentioned to you guys before, markets like to reveal themselves, and they do it in a lot of ways, and they usually do it within the first couple days of a trend. And what you try to do is set a trend line, and usually the trend will be very clear and show you that where the support of the trend is going to be. And you can see here, so this uptrend, basically a current uptrend in Apple, started here on June 7th and had a strong continuation on June 14th. And there's absolutely no doubt about where this diagonal support trend line is at. It connects these 2 points here, which are on June 3rd and June 11th. So what we do is we take that trend line up and draw it to the upside. So, guys, this current trend from this point here, June 14th, up until now, is not yet over. This current bullish uptrend is not over, and it's not over until we break to the downside of our initial diagonal trend line. And I'm going to show you some more evidence of this and kind of explain it the best way I can. But there is no reason to expect a crash in markets or a crash in Apple until two things happen. One, this trend line, this longer term cycle trend line, is broken to the downside. And number two, this point here, which is very important, and I'm going to show you why when we go into the 20-minute, but this was a reset of momentum inside this major bullish cycle, and it's shown where to expect the floor in our support. So basically, we have 2 points here that are right now currently supporting a bullish thesis on Apple, not bearish. In the absolute micro term, yes, broad markets showing a little bit potential weakness and a little bit of uncertainty. I went over that. You guys can watch my video on the cues from, I believe I put it out on Friday. A little bit of uncertainty, neutrality in overall markets right now. Yes, we do want to be careful. But going back to specifically Apple right now, there is absolutely no thesis whatsoever right now where you can come and you can tell me that markets are ready to correct 15% with the current alignment of what we're seeing here on Apple. We have not even yet broken this bullish cycle trend on Apple, okay? We are still well within this. Not only that, we are still within this this neutral midterm cycle here on the 20-minute chart here, and let me show you that. This is when we had this big dip here, which is what I wanted to show you off these bottoms. So we had this big dip here on the 20-minute, and then it just Apple reversed itself, came back up, and obviously we formed this double top and have since in a sort of correction phase here. But in order for what we need to see here on Apple to start a major correction is we need to see momentum waning, we need to see trend lines broken, and we need to start seeing a series of lower highs and lower lows, which would entail still a lot of work to do. If you're bearish on Apple, what we need to see here is failure of this trend line and some sort of beginnings of a failure of this important trend line here at around 141.66. So for the bearish thesis on Apple to hold up in the midterm, we need to come down here, start doing lower highs, and have a break here of this level and a failure of this medium-term bullish cycle uptrend line. And what can happen here, if we do get a failure at this point here, that would start showing that there's a clear set of lower lows that are developing. So on the next top, we would need to be really careful and start watching for this thing to develop in some more bearish activity. But guys, right now we are showing nothing that's really even close to that. Okay, and what I want to show you here, let's just get rid of some of these trend lines here, kind of clean up the chart. So that's kind of I wanted to show you that. I know this is it's kind of hard for me because this isn't a longer tutorial, and I don't want to get really in the weeds of how to set these trend lines, but this is extremely important right here, this trend line, okay, at about 141.66 area, somewhere in here, as is this trend line here, is extremely important. Okay, so both of those are extremely important and are supporting a bullish thesis on Apple right now, not a bearish one. In the very shortest term, let me open this up for you and show you this cycle here. So we can see, I pointed this out, this cycle here on July 19th bottomed at around 141.76. So that's our support line. Yes, in the absolute 20-minute cycle, yes, we have broken to the downside. You can clearly see that right here. But that doesn't mean the overall trend is bearish. It just doesn't mean it, because you've still got these even more important trend lines here, which I pointed out to you. This support, horizontal support here, and this bullish trend cycle support here. So very, very short term, yes, Apple does have some things it needs to do in order to start gaining positive momentum. I would like to see, let me open this up here on the 5-minute and see if we can get just a view of this kind of really micro trend here. Yeah, I'm wanting to see a clear break back above these levels, above this trend line here. Let me get the drawing tool out here. Maybe something like this, and continuing up to the upside with this really micro term bearish series of higher lows that's developing. And then that would give everything I needed to see to start gaining a lot more hope in the short-term and long-term bullish thesis of Apple, if we were to see that. So for now, yes, the 20-minute trend line cycle is broken to the downside and potentially headed down, maybe come down to these areas next week, around 143. And I showed you this before, 141.66. These are very, very important trend lines. So if we come down here and pop quickly back to the upside, I think there is definitely a strong chance of both of those things happening. So to say there's a massive correction coming in overall markets, obviously that's not going to happen without the inclusion of Apple being bearish as well and breaking some of these key zones to the downside. Now, I do want to show you guys kind of a little exercise on the last, just to kind of illustrate my point a little bit better about the importance of the higher lows and these trend lines. Let's look at this trend here that started bullish trend on March 25th and kind of topped out in this areas here. So we're talking about this trend here, and I'm going to illustrate those trend lines to you guys with this, just so you can get kind of another tutorial about what's happening here with these trend lines. So you can see here, let's pull back out here. So you can see this bullish trend to the upside started here right around March 31st. And we were able to see here within the first few days what the bullish trend was. It was very, very clear here what had happened. So that is my cycle bull trend line, as opposed to here where we had this really nice like 45-degree angle with a lot of room for continued upside, even if there were some big pullbacks. This one kind of set itself at a much sharper trajectory, and we got the first breach of that trend line here on April 14th. Okay? So at that point, that's going to be where you want to set your first horizontal trend line, and that is also going to be represented in the 20-minute time frame. So I'll show you guys that too. But we broke to the downside here on April 14th and just started chopping sideways. And we just could not break these levels of resistance up here, right at around $135. And to kind of show you that even more clearly, you can see all the while throughout this entire part from April, right at the beginning of April, all the way till this cycle broke on around May 3rd, you could see this cycle was trying as hard as it could to push to the upside, but it just could not gain any steam. The initial bullish cycle trend line had not yet, had already broken convincingly on April 14th, and we were just trending sideways. So, to me, this is a very weakened trend. Now, can these types of trends reset? Yes, that's a whole nother thing for in the future on a tutorial. But in this case, this important trend line, and I'm going to show you that, will go down to the 20-minute here. Let's see if we can find that here. Yeah, this is perfect. So this is where we initially broke right here, and this is where I showed you we need to set that trend line right here on the break right around April 23rd. So that's our horizontal trend line, and you can see this next part of this trend was trying as hard as it could to push to the upside, and it could not gain any headway at all on price. This 20-minute trend cycle approximation is here, and we broke to the outside of that right here around April 27th. So you can see here there was a lot, a whole lot of things in here that were indicating that there was extreme amount of weakness in this overall bullish trend, including the major break here on April 14th. So, and here you can see we weren't able to gain any traction as far as higher prices here. And this trend here on the 20-minute, yes, it started breaking down here. The cycle was showing no signs of recovery. But more importantly than that, you could see here on April 30th, the first breach and starting to put candles below this extremely important horizontal resistance. Shot back to the upside, and you started seeing here this divergence in prices, which was working, and got this major downshoot in prices here around May 3rd and continued through May 4th. And Apple went from around 133 down to 126 approximately. So that's kind of just a brief. I know some of this might be a little bit of confusing, but no need to worry, guys. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I take all of this stuff into consideration when I'm looking at charts and trends, so I'm basically doing all the work for you. If you don't understand what I'm talking about on some of this stuff, don't worry. I talk about it all the times while on my updates, so that's why you're going to want to make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of it. But basically, this trend here, guys, it was very clear when it was breaking down, and you could just see it continuing breaking to the downside here, breach this horizontal trend, breach this diagonal trend line, and all of that led eventually to pretty much significantly lower prices over the period of, let's see, May 3rd to May 13th, over the period of about 10 days or so. A loss of, let's see, let's get a ruler tool out and just kind of give an approximation. Yeah, about 9%. So, yeah, but that 9% drop, you know, it did not happen out of the blue. It didn't happen in a vacuum. This is what I'm always trying to say, guys. If a trend is neutral, you need to be neutral, and you don't just start saying, oh, well, slow stochastics are showing down, so the markets are crashing 20% next week. It's completely irresponsible as far as I'm concerned. So again, guys, here we are on Apple, back to current day. The major bullish cycle line is not yet even broken to the downside, nor is this very important support here at around $142. So there is tons of support here for the bull cause on Apple. We have these two important trend lines here that can still hold. Can prices next week dip down here? Definitely around 142, 47, somewhere in this zone. Absolutely 100%. But they can just as quickly, if not faster, retrace off these supports back to the upside, bolstering our bullish case for Apple over the coming weeks. So we need to watch this stuff very, very carefully, very closely. And guys, the other thing is that even if we are to get some sort of a bearish breach of Apple to the downside, that doesn't necessarily mean the bull run is over yet. You can see here this major bull cycle in Apple is still working to the upside, and what can happen is it can dip and then it can reset and start moving higher. So again, all this stuff is revealed in these cycles, in these trend lines, everything like that. So yeah, just basically, guys, I'm still neutral, really short term in Apple, but midterm, long term, no question in my mind, I am 100% bullish still here as far as everything I'm seeing. I am not seeing and I am not saying that there is going to be a 20% crash starting next week. I think that's really irresponsible. Again, stuff like the indicators that you're looking at, the MACDs, the RSIs, the slow stochastics, all that stuff can diverge and diverge and diverge negatively for months and months and months, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, there's a big spike up in the market, and all those negative divergences that you thought were building in your chart are now completely wiped away. So I just want to say that all that matters, really, guys, is supports, resistances, diagonal trend lines, and momentum around those scenarios. So that's kind of everything I think I wanted to say. This video has ended up being a lot longer than I wanted. A session here in Apple turned into 30 minutes. That really wasn't my intention, but I think we got a lot of different things that were important discussed in this video. You guys have the picture of my overall thoughts on Apple. Yes, major overhead resistance here at 150 area, major support here at around 141.70, this zone in here, and we are going to be wanting to watch our cycles, our bullish trend lines, and our momentum off of these trend lines to get a better picture of where Apple is headed in the next couple weeks. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this video today. If you made it all the way to the end of my rant, congratulations. I know it's been a long one, but thank you so much. Definitely, if you haven't done so, you watched this entire video. I know you like my content. Go down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification. Going to be coming up with lots more videos, Apple broad markets, continuing next week. And as you know, I keep most of my videos in the 5 to 6 minute range, so they aren't quite as long as this. But I wanted to illustrate some things that I thought were really important in this video. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. I will see everybody again in the next update. Bye for now.